Christian Ray.
From global artist to servant leader, Christian Ray Flores is a multifaceted leader with an extraordinary journey that spans continents and industries. He's a philanthropist, an entrepreneur, an investor who's raised millions of dollars for startups and mentors leaders and entrepreneurs while remaining deeply committed to Christian ministry. I'm so excited to have him on. Let's welcome him to Sunday Soul Day. Welcome to Sunday Soul Day, Christian.
Thank you, Damesha.
No, thank you for coming on and blessing the show, blessing the audience. I'm so excited to talk to you. Like our initial conversation, I just could not get over, and you were so humble. You did not share half the stuff that you've done. And so when I did my research, I'm like, oh my goodness, he didn't even tell me this, So yeah. I'm so amazed at your journey and just would love to start kind of from your early life, because I think that, really impacted you and shaped you into who you are today. So I would love to start there, just talking about your early life, because it was filled with so many incredible challenges, from political turmoil to refugee camps to growing up in multiple countries and learning 4 different languages by the time you were 9.
Yep.
Like, how did these experiences impact you and kind of shape your worldview?
They were very painful at the time, obviously. Mm-hmm. And, but there's a way to transform traumatic experiences into strengths. And I just really, in hindsight, actually, I'm grateful for those experiences. I really am. Although at the time it was hard, right? My dad was in a concentration camp in Chile. My mom was in hiding. We ended up in a refugee facility for a few months and protected by the UN. I mean, it's just horrible stuff. And you learn so early, way too early, I think, for a child to learn cruelty, right? Human cruelty, the extent of human cruelty, and almost just the lack of certainty that can come from political turmoil and tyranny, things like that. So, but there's a lot of good things that I've learned as well, and that is to appreciate different cultures, different languages, different approaches, and sort of worldviews even. Because when you're a child, you don't learn things the linear way. You almost like absorb with your pores, right? We moved to 4 different countries by age 7. And it was sort of confusing to me as a child, obviously, because I'm like, what? I mean, it's not even neighboring countries, right? We're talking about Russia, Germany, Latin America, Chile, Africa. I mean, people look different, they act different, they speak different. So my dad tells me that the first year I was in Africa, I was so confused that I went quiet for like a year, that I wouldn't speak up in public. And he was concerned, and he asked me, like, why are you so quiet? And I said, I just don't know. I feel like I don't fit in. I feel like I don't know the language. And it was true, right? It was just, I think I was just overwhelmed. But on the upside of that is when you have that level of uncertainty, you learn how to read people, you learn how to love people, you learn how to sort of learn from the almost like from the ether, body language, intonations, things like that. And I ended up learning 4 languages by age 9. And that shapes you in all kinds of ways, right? There's studies actually that people that speak several languages have almost like a different way of thinking, because words communicate values differently. And so it really was a huge blessing. I think it gave me the gift of creativity early on, that it paid off eventually as an artist, as an entrepreneur. It gave me the gift of really appreciating culture and actually like truly appreciating culture by living in an immersive way in different cultures and understanding how wonderful people are, So I just really love people, I think, because of that, like I have a genuine affinity for people that is probably a little bit above normal. And I think the third thing that comes to mind is that when you are when you're immersed in different scenarios and different environments, you learn eclectic thinking, or some people call it symphonic thinking, where you don't just hear the instruments separately, but you hear the instruments, how they would sound together. And that's a great, I think it's a great skill set to learn for life in general, business, entrepreneurship, creativity, the arts, all of those things.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. You said so much in there. And I'm going to try and get a little bit of a recap here. But I love that you talked about learning different languages and, you know, and just understanding the power, you know, because words hold so much power. And so I think like when you're able to speak all those different languages, you hold like almost a different level of power, you know, because of it. You know, so I think that's so phenomenal. And then just the appreciation for cultures. I mean, you know, you hear people talk about that all the time, traveling, you know, to different cultures and different countries and absorbing their culture, but actually living in it, you know, as a child when you're just like a sponge. Oh my gosh, what a gift, you know, like despite the turmoil and all the pain that you saw,
Yeah.
you know, I can imagine, you know, just how much of a gift that was too. And just your love for people, you know, like despite seeing all the things that you saw, like it just says a lot about your heart, you know, and how you view things like through a lens of love rather than a lens of, you know, kind of fear and hate. And so I just love that you said that. And around just being creative, you know, and I think like you're so right. Like having those kind of experiences probably made you an even better entrepreneur, which we'll get to, you know, a little bit further along in our conversation. But you kind of touched on it in a form of music, you know, like, you know, in the instruments. And it doesn't surprise me that you actually went into music, you know, after
Yeah,
that. So
exactly.
tell,
Exactly.
tell us a little bit about that because you became a pretty major figure in Russian music, like back in the
I,
90s with your hit Our Generation. Like, what inspired that song? And then also, like, what inspired you to go that route? Because speaking four languages, you could have done all kinds of things.
yeah, and I think that's eventually actually what brought me out of music is that I had these other things that were not really activated in my music career. So I sort of transitioned later, like a decade after, I had a decade long career. But I think originally it was very unlikely, right? I just loved singing. I had a natural tone since I was a kid. So my parents would have visitors over and it's like, Christian, sing a song. You know, like they would basically ask me to sing a song, like no instruments, no nothing, just sing a song, and I would sing a song, and so they sort of made me into this performer early on because I had a natural tone that was sort of pure, and eventually that transitioned into we were in Africa and somebody put together a little Latin children's group, right? And it was sort of this folk music, and we would sing songs from like Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, and Colombia, whatever, you know, like Latin sort of folklore. And I had this music teacher, so she was the director of the group, and she was just wonderful. And I've thanked her so many times since. And of course, I'm probably her only pop star, you know, alumni. So she's excited and proud of me. But
Absolutely.
I don't know what it was. We would go rehearse, right? And then, you know, when you do something and time stops and you're in this state of flow, and that's what I experienced there. I just always felt like, gosh, I can do this all day long, you know? But I never thought it would be a professional thing ever because I'm in the middle of
Mm.
nowhere in Africa. It's a folk group, it's kids, you know, whatever. So it just sort of slid eventually when we moved back to Russia. It was just there, like, yeah, I used to sing, basically, right? None of my immediate family were in the arts. So I went sort of the traditional route. I was like, okay, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but okay, let's pick economics. So I majored in economics and I got a master's degree in economics. But I still actually love economics. Still to this day, incredibly grateful for my education because it gave me sort of this insight into humanity. The economics piece is a really interesting piece. It explains a lot, right, of the things that you see. But you know, I was in my early 20s. I graduated. I mean, I graduated 21. I graduated with a master's degree, which was unusual. I was the youngest in my class, right? And And but I mean, you're in your 20s. You don't want to go do banking in your 20s. Like I didn't, at least, right? Or like international trade. All of my friends were going to these companies or furthering their education, getting PhDs. And I was like, I was so bored. I couldn't do it. I did it for a little bit, and then I just like, I can't do it. And then somebody, like literally a friend of mine, just randomly said, "Well, you sing. Why don't you just try singing?" And it just never entered my mind before this guy brought it up. And on top of that, I was a dancer. I was breakdancing. I was part of this subculture at the time. And I was like literally the guy who like rehearses all week in some basement with some idiots, right? That's all they want to do. And then in the weekends we would go and like literally would put the cardboard and the boom box and we would dance, and that's what we did.
Love
And
it. I
and,
love it.
and so eventually I sort of started thinking, well, I can sing, I can dance better than most. Maybe I can create something out of this, right? And I was very inspired by people that fused sort of street stuff with professional, high grade, original stuff, like Michael Jackson, people like that. And I'm like, maybe I can do something like that. So I was super inspired by Michael and Prince and Janet. I mean, that's the era of them. And I sort of started. I'm like, I would start hanging out. I did background vocals for this fusion band for a little bit, and for just a little bit. And I even recorded a couple of songs with them. I did the solo, but it was like sort of this, sort of low grade thing. Didn't go anywhere, and I just wanted to be in show business. Had nothing to show for it, and I go to so I made friends with the entourage of show business. So I was invited to showbiz parties because I made friends there. So essentially I was the entourage. I was sort of the people orbiting show business people, because I wanted to be around the people that I wanted their life eventually. So I was one of these parties, and this guy shows up, and he's this short guy, and he goes, "You're an artist?" And I looked exotic, and because I wanted to look the part, right? And he goes, and I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I have a recording studio, and what do you do?" I'm like, "Well, I want to do pop and R&B and things like that." And of course I had no demos. Like at the time you couldn't record at home, right? So this guy's basically saying, "I have the golden ticket, and I might give it to you." And because you just couldn't, even a good demo was impossible to do. Like the technology was not there. And he goes, "So if I give you some night hours in the studio, what would you do with that?" I said, "Well, I'll record some demos for you and show you that I can create good music." He goes, "So you're going to write it, right?" I said, "Yeah." Who's going to write the lyrics? I'm like, "I'm going to write the lyrics." You go, "Okay, why don't you come see me on Monday, show me something." And I said, "Sure, thank you, sir," like that kind of thing. And I went home and I wrote a song. I'd literally never written a song in my life before that.
No.
Yeah. And I went home and wrote a song, and he liked it, yeah, surprisingly. And then it started snowballing from there. I found a producer. We started geeking out on sounds and developed a signature sound. And all of a sudden, we're in these small clubs. Then we're on TV. Then we have a big hit. Then a string of hits. Then this major hits. And then Boris Yeltsin's team's reaching out because they want to use my song in the pre-election campaign. And all of a sudden, I'm playing like sports arenas with like 10,000 people. So that's sort of how it went.
That is remarkable. Like, I mean, seriously, first of all, I just want to talk about your belief in yourself.
Yeah.
Like you hadn't had the experience of writing your own
Yeah.
music. You hadn't even been in a studio. Like, where do you think that comes from? Because it's like, it's almost like this je ne sais quoi, it's like you can't like quite put your finger on it, but like, where do you think that comes from? Like just having that pure
Yeah.
belief in yourself.
It's
Was
a
it
good,
all of your experiences?
I don't, I'm not exactly sure. I have theories about it, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think part of it
Well,
was
let's
the
talk about it.
experiences, right? I think part of it was like I've sort of reverse engineered it a little bit, and I actually use it now as a performance coach with people. Like I help them get confidence. And the way I do it is, look, you can't reproduce obviously my life journey. Like that's impossible to do. But what you can reproduce is some of the elements of it. And the elements of that really helped me is that I realized that, first of all, I can tolerate suffering just fine. And people are terrified of suffering. People are terrified of being poor, of not having a place to live, or instability, or rejection, and things like that. That's why people don't take action, right? But there's the actual how much suffering will ensue from you starting a new career, or writing a book, or starting a new company, is actually minimal. So your brain is basically lying to you. But what I was cured of that by reality, right? So I was like, for a few years, I slept in the kitchen, for example. We had a 1-bedroom apartment. I was raised by a single mom. I slept on a pull-out chair, not even a pull-out couch. So like, we had food shortages and things like that. And basically what I've noticed through those things is that actually you don't need much to be happy and be fine. Like, all those things that we're scared of, honestly, they don't break you at all. Like, you can get used to stuff like that. So if the risk is not as high as you think it is, you will take more risks. You have more boldness in you. So that's sort of my theory. And I really sort of, when I work with people, I try to help them understand that their mind is playing tricks on them. And there's a way to diminish that fear, and that paralyzing fear, and be more confident and more courageous and take bold steps. So that's sort of one piece that I've sort of uncovered right through this whole thing. And the other one was really, what are you interested in? And I was super curious about show business, right? So not only did I like singing or dancing and things like that, I actually read books about careers of people. So I read biographies, and I could tell you, I mean, even then, I could tell you, my top, whatever, 4 or 5 artists, I could tell you who wrote the songs, where they recorded, what label they were signed to. I could tell you sometimes who mixed the record, just completely obscure stuff, because I wanted to understand how this thing works from the inside out. So because I think I studied so much, I researched so much of the stuff, and I geeked out to such depth, that I had sort of this internal confidence. I know how this thing works, at least in broad strokes, right? And I think that's probably a big part of it. So obviously it's a mystery, but
No, that's so good. Oh my, I mean, like you hit on something so powerful, and it's something I've been talking about on the show. First is like people living in two ways, in fear and love. And a lot of times people live in fear. And
yeah,
so they don't take those risks. But when you're in a love space, meaning like you've seen it, you've lived in it, you realize, hey, I could live with minimal stuff, but you still remain present. Like that's when you're in the love space, like you're not worried about all the challenges that come with, maybe exploring this career in music. So you're living in such a love space and not a fear space. Then the other thing that I think that is missing, when I talk with clients, when I have encountered people just throughout my life, it's just having an insane curiosity, but almost like an obsession too.
yeah,
Like when you love something, or you're insanely curious about it, like it's almost like you need to become a student,
hmm,
like I'm tell people I love being a teacher, but I am a student first. Like I'm a student of so many things, and I go down these rabbit holes where I get so insanely curious, and
yeah,
I'm like, and I get so excited about the learning, so there's so much in what you said in that, because I think it's the difference between like good athletes and great athletes. Great athletes like study. I remember my father, who played professional football, he was telling me, I want you to learn about track. That's all he said to me. That's all he had to say to me. And one athlete could maybe take that completely different. I took it as I need to study all of the great athletes that came before me, like
exactly.
not just their bios, their this, like I wanted to study how they ran, their cadence, like counting how many steps they took. This is how insanely curious I am. I'm like, I would study how many steps they took
Hmm.
to win a race.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that level, so, oh my gosh, I love that you said that. I just love that.
And to sort of piggyback on that for your audience, I think what's important is, we'll listen to those podcasts, right, as we're doing now, and people can go, yeah, right, I'm just not that. And what I say to you, if that's what you're thinking, is that yes, you are. You just don't. You haven't developed the skills on how to learn, and that's one of the things that I love teaching people how to do. Also, reverse engineering my origin story. So I'll give you an example, and I think you'll be very excited about this. So, have you studied a foreign language in high school, for example?
Yes.
What did you study?
French.
Do you speak French now?
I don't speak it fluently. I speak
Yeah,
very minimal. I didn't practice it.
exactly. Well, the reason why you don't is because you didn't go to France and didn't live there for 6 months.
Exactly.
If you had lived there in 6 months, you would still speak it now. And the
Mm,
reason for that is because the best way to learn is by immersion, full
yes.
immersion. But but instead of being a victim and going, oh, I didn't go to France, I didn't have the money or whatever, it's the same thing that people would say, yeah, it's good. It's easy for you to say you're curious, you're this voracious reader, things like that. But what I'm saying to you is that you can learn at an accelerated rate if you know how to focus, if you stop dabbling, and if you mimic the principles of immersive learning, which is very simple actually, is daily. You learn something every day. If you read, let's say you want to start a business, you know nothing about sales, but you need sales to run a business. You read about sales for 30 minutes a day, every day. One thing, you learn every single day. It's immersive, right? The second is you practice every single week. And the third thing, you get feedback. So you practice around somebody or with somebody so you can see a response. So this mimics the immersive language learning model. So if I'm immersed, let's say I'm in Mozambique, right? I moved there, I don't speak Portuguese, I have these kids around me riding bikes. I'm going to try to say something every day, right? And I'm going to listen to them every day, and then I'm going to trace something every day, and I'm going to get feedback every day that, no, you don't say it this way, you'd say it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So just by doing these three things daily, every single day, you learn a little bit. You do it in an interactive way, right? And you do something. So you don't just learn it intellectually, you actually practice, right?
Yes.
Every day you practice, you get feedback every single day. You can literally learn sales. Within 6 months, you're going to be a fantastic salesperson. And I can tell you that with great confidence, that people don't do that, and therefore they don't learn their dreams. They don't live their dreams because they don't know how to learn. And everybody knows how to learn if you just apply this, right? So you probably heard about the 10,000 hours sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
You become master. 10,000 hours, if you just break it down, and there's a lot of people dispute that, but the general idea is clear. If you do something over and over again, you're going to get good at it. That's the idea, right? But you know what 10,000 hours is? It's 20 minutes, 18 minutes a day for a year. That's all it is. 18 minutes.
I love that.
If you really want to live out your dream, like if you really want to stop being a cog in the machine, right? Is it worth 18 minutes a day? Will you exchange, one episode of a stupid show you watch on Netflix to escape your reality to shape a new reality? And that's the stuff that I feel like that's the superpower that most people just don't know they have access to, but they totally do.
Mm-hmm.
They totally do.
Well, and I love that you broke it down just to such a simple, formula for people. But I think the challenge too, again, going back to fear and love, right, is people don't even know where to start because they haven't done their inner work to know even what they want. And
Yeah,
so I
that's
think
true.
that too is the challenge. It's like you can know how to apply something or how to study, but it's almost like when if you're studying for a test, right? And I've been there. I've studied all the wrong things for a test before and got a really shitty grade, and
Yeah.
I've studied the right things and I knew what I was, studying for and I got great grades. So, I think that too plays a role,
Yeah, I
in the
agree.
challenge. And so one thing I always say, when I'm working with clients is like, you want to first start with you, like, and really tapping in, spending time with yourself so you can hear yourself and understand like where you want to go first. So,
Well, I
oh my
think
goodness,
to what
love
you're
this conversation.
saying about track, right? That's what it is.
Mhm.
You know what lights you up. Once you get
Yeah.
in touch with what lights you up, what makes you feel fully alive, what brings you joy,
Yes.
what energizes you, you can pull on that thread and you can put in the 10,000 hours, and you can obsess just like you did. Like you can
Hmm.
watch endless tapes of people running and how they start and how they finish and how they invest in the beginning and how they pace themselves and how do they win, all of those things. And you'll obsess and you'll start practicing in yourself. You get that confidence give you results, then confidence comes from results, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is that most people most of us run on autopilot because the urgent displaces the important, and you don't have a daily practice of getting in touch with what do you want exactly in the very
Mhm.
essence of who you are. And finding that is scary. Some
Yes.
people know it, I think, but are just won't go there because of what it means.
Hmm.
They can interpret that it's too late for me, it's too scary for me. If I think about it too long, it's going to be too painful. I'm going to be just discouraged, so I'm going to stop thinking
Hmm.
about it. But truly, it's reversing that and not having that give you energy is where the secret, I think, lies.
Yes. Oh, beautifully, beautifully said. Not even going to piggyback. It was so beautiful. So good. Oh my gosh. Well, you have done so many things that I know have to give you energy because they're just so amazing. Like, I mean, you transitioned out of doing music, and then started working for a lot of international charities like Hope Worldwide, co-founded the Hollywood World with your wife, Deb,
Mm-hmm.
and so many other things. Like, how did you navigate such drastic, shifts? Like, that's one thing I say on the podcast. It's like, there's so many things that we have common denominators, right? Grief,
Mm-hmm.
pain, transitions in life,
Yeah.
and love and to be loved, like those are our common denominators. Like, you had so many transitions. Talk to me about that one.
Well, I can tell you what I did wrong first, because I
Mm,
think it's important, to not just say, "Oh, my life is glorious and glamorous, and look at me doing all this fancy stuff." You can overdo it. I think you can be that person who just goes wherever the wind goes and it follows your passion in an inappropriate way that puts you in too much risk, too much debt, too much not enough time to even gain traction in one thing. And I've definitely done that. You know, I'm a passionate guy. I'm all in. I have a high tolerance for risk, so I don't have the barriers that most people have. I don't have them, but I also overdo it. Right? I just jump into a new thing. So, for example, 2 years ago when the war in Ukraine started, it was 3 years ago now actually, and I just dropped everything because I used to live in Ukraine. One of my daughters was in Ukraine. I had so many friends who were in bomb shelters, and it was just I was so horrified at it that I just literally dropped everything and started fundraising for the refugees and raised like over almost 300,000. I think we raised, helped hundreds of people. Now that was a good thing to do. I don't regret it. But here's sort of the downside of it. The downside is that I dropped everything, including my business, to do it for months and months and months on end, which is very irresponsible. Very irresponsible, right? So, and the reason I point that out is that I want to make sure that people understand the downside of doing some of the stuff that I've done. And I literally say to my clients, please don't do what I did here. And because I can teach you from bad experiences and from good experiences as well, right?
absolutely.
So I would say I don't overdo it. I think it's a very wise formula to have 80% predictable, stable, incremental growth, things that can keep you safe and pay the bills and make sure you don't go bankrupt while you're trying the audacious thing. And then 20% is the audacious thing, right? I would say that's a really good sort of rule of thumb. And you can do both if you have a work ethic and rhythms in life that allow you to be super, super productive, right? And which most people just don't have. That's the cost of excellence. The cost of excellence
Mhm.
is you need to work really hard without getting depleted, knowing how to rest, all of those things. As an athlete, I say that to people that I work with all the time. You can relate. Is I say, so to all these executives or entrepreneurs who are just come like limping into
Yeah.
my coaching session, like, oh man, I'm so tired. I can't. You can't believe that this happened and this happened and this happened. And okay, and so we help them navigate, sort of structure their life a certain way. And what I tell them is that if you want to be a top performer, you cannot live your life in a depleted state. In the same way that an athlete, if you go to the Olympics, who there competes at a depleted state? No one, because they know if they want a medal, they need to be both in top shape and rested, or they won't win. So my point is, why am I even telling you this? Oh, it's the multiple things, right? Is that when you attempt multiple things, it's overwhelming, sometimes it's tiring, but you can develop a really high productive, high performance lifestyle without depleting yourself. And that's, I think, an essential piece, is learning how to rest, learning how to take breaks, learning how to decompress, learning how to take a step back, have a spiritual practice to sort of process what's going on and not go into these wormholes of anxiety, that sort of thing. So that's sort of a big thing for me when I talk to people like that, because I have friends who have burned themselves up by being hyper adventurous, and now they have to spend some time getting restored to health,
Mhm.
and then they can do their thing again, and they're brilliant, but they can't really express their brilliance if they're sort of limping all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's so interesting. You mentioned, founders and entrepreneurs. Like I see it. Um, I saw it so much in tech, and I was one of them. I was a leader that operated from depleted.
Hmm.
And I think it hinders you, from tapping into your greatness and all of your superpowers.
It
and
does,
and
yeah.
really being able to, it's like a large part of the company that I'm building. My coaching business, Leveled Coaching, is really around helping leaders get more whole. And serving from a more whole place, rather than a fraction of
Yeah.
who they are. And I
Mm.
think a lot of times we serve from that fractional version, and it really does not just ourselves a disservice, but the people that we're serving. So I love that you shared that, because I'm very similar to you. Like I'm a, I use the analogy of a pool. I'm like a cannonballer, like I'll
Yeah,
cannonball
exactly.
into
Yeah.
something, and it's like, and that's my energy, and a lot of times, like I'm working on not being a sprinter,
Yeah, yeah.
and really transitioning to a marathoner, and so
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
been a challenge for me too. It's like I run fast still, but then I remember, oh yeah, I gotta pause and get some water, I take some breaks. So
Exactly, exactly. And
yeah,
it takes effort.
totally.
It takes skills and structure and discipline and all of those.
Yes,
And I mean, you're erring in the reckless abandon side of things, or you're erring in being too careful. Both are bad, actually.
yes, yes,
And you find
absolutely.
yourself, and that's, I mean, one of the big things that helps with that as well, I think, is being is guidance coaching. So if you're listening to this and you need Damesha, please pay her, uh, because you need coaching. You need somebody from the outside to look into your life
Yes.
and be objective, and you need community, right? So that's part of the reason why, the entrance part to my coaching program is a cohort. Is I need you to
I love
around other
that.
people, not just me one on one. And I think that's really important, because it's very hard to have people around you who walk with you, not just know you, not want to go just for a beer with you, but who actually
Mhm.
know your strengths, your weaknesses, your passions, where you are, your problems, it's really, really hard to have that kind. It's a treasure to have people like that in your life. You actually
Mhm.
need to work on it, and people don't work on it because we live in a very atomistic sort of society where it's very individualistic. And we actually shoot ourselves in the foot by doing that, by not having community around us, because it's the community that gives you corrective commentary, right? And support. Like I can illustrate. I was at this retreat. It must have been like a year and a half ago, and they have like some speaker, and then there's like breakouts, right? So you've talked to people at your table about this. What are you going to do about this? So, and I was at a table with like, oh no, I think it was even smaller groups, like threes or something like that. So I was there with two other guys who already knew me, and I'm like, guys, I just got a revelation. And they're like, what is it? I'm like, I feel like I need to, the thing I need to really do is focus. Just choose one or two things I want to do and just do that. And I'm looking at them as like, this is good stuff, right? And they're like, you think? And they just give me such a hard time. They're like, everybody knows this about you. How come how is this a revelation to you? Everybody knows you can't focus. You're doing too many things. And they were laughing at me, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry, but you need those reality checks every once in a while.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
if you
I
don't,
think too, like relationships are very surface, like people don't take the time to go, in deep with one another, to have that level of honesty. Cause that's really what you're talking about is just being
yeah,
honest, and having that level of care and love for someone, like I love that you touched on that because I was just posted something I think today about that. Like, there's like three different types of relationships. There's like the transactional, there's the ones that, that are a little bit more than transactional, but they're still not the honest relationship, where people are going to give you the honest feedback. And so I think getting in communities like yours, like-minded individuals that, really can take the time to see you, and see you in a way that looks past the surface,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that to me is real love.
it is. And I think having a coach, and this may come across as self-serving, but I truly mean it, is is a massive accelerator of growth, because even if you're lucky enough to have a few friends who know you, walk with you, know you in, all of the nuance of who you are, um, which most people don't, by the way. But even if you're lucky enough to do that, the probability of one of those friends or more to have expertise that will accelerate your growth is almost zero. And that's why coaching is so powerful, because you get an ally who can pay attention, who has the expertise. So it's both, in a way, a friend who can walk with you and see the nuance and all of the stuff you're wrestling with, but also an expert at the same time. And that's why you pay for a coach, because it accelerates your journey. And what takes you normally would take you 5 years can take you 6 months. And how much is that worth to you? And to me, that's sort of a really important question to ask.
Oh my gosh, that is like spot on. And I think it's so helpful, to people who are kind of toying with the idea of hiring a coach. Like I think my career was accelerated because I had multiple coaches throughout my career, from, a life coach to a spiritual life coach to, another HR professional that was, really just had done so many extraordinary things in her life. I was able to turn to her, so I think coaching is so powerful
Yeah.
in that sense, but also like, helping you make sense of the stories that you've told yourself. Because I think a lot of times it's not just in the learning, it's also in the unlearning,
Yeah.
and unlearning those unhealthy patterns and things that we've, kind of taken on from childhood, from, our lives. And we've, just kind of held them to be true. And, the power of a great coach is that they're going to help you unpack a lot of that and also help you unlearn, and develop more healthy habits.
Yeah. Very true. Very, very true.
Well, tell me this, because you mentioned faith a couple times. Like, how has your faith played a role in kind of guiding your career choices? From your ministry work that you've done across countries. Like, how has your faith played a role?
It's the most important thing in my life.
Hmm.
But it started off as nothing because I was raised by a couple of Marxists, atheists, right? Everybody I knew was an atheist, So I come from a very unlikely source into faith, and really what brought me into faith, into Christianity specifically, is pain. Is I haven't I had the talent and the grit and the drive to become one of the biggest pop stars in all of that space of 15 different countries after the Soviet Union fell apart. But I didn't have the moral framework and skill set to manage, to navigate relationships, romantic relationships specifically, but friendships as well, and a whole slew of other things that if you grow up in a non-faith, in a non-moral framework environment, and you can have a moral framework even if you're not, let's say, a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim. But most of the time, if you don't have that, there's no framework that comes with it. It's sort of whatever goes, right? And to me, I became super famous super fast, and I was really heartbroken after a relationship fell apart that I destroyed, actually, But the relationship involved a baby, which was made it very deeply painful for me. So I was literally had a number one hit. I was playing sports arenas and I was clinically depressed. And then I met this Canadian pastor who invited me over, and we're sitting in his living room, and I look at his family and I go, man, there's something special about this family, and I don't know any families like that. And I literally turn to him and I go, how do I get what you have? And he was my first coach. I mean, I think really he's the reason why I coach now, is because I realized that the presence of the right person with high wisdom and love can literally redirect the rest of my life, which you can't pay for this kind of thing, right? It's absolutely unique, and it's a treasure. So he invested in me, and to my credit, he was very wise, and I made the right bet to listen to him. And I was so humbled by then, because I was sort of very arrogant at the time because of all the fame, but I was so humbled by my pain and by my personal inadequacy that I was like, I'll do anything, just tell me what to do. And he was like, do this, do that, don't do that. And I'm like, really? What the heck? And like, because I've never read the Bible, nothing, I was living a very rock star lifestyle, right? And he was like, yeah, you have to stop doing that. And I'm like, I don't even know how that is that it's physically possible, right? And but I had to humble out. I had to just be obedient to my coach and do what he says, trust the process. And he just taught me by walking with me, explaining scripture to me. I understood that there's this treasure trove in this book that talks about fame, about power, about money, about entrepreneurship, about relationships, about parenting, about everything. This thing has been around for 2,000 years, and it's impacted billions of lives, and I had no idea it was right here under my nose. And it changed me from the inside out and gave me all this incredible, this moral framework. It was sort of like a moral law of the universe, right? So when I see something, I see it through that lens. And because this is truth, that lens is accurate. And if you're accurate, you're right more than you're wrong, you're going to succeed in all kinds of different ways, right? So it's a huge deal in my life right now. Yeah.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for sharing that. And oh my gosh, like I can only imagine the transition,
Yeah.
in your
It's crazy.
mindset,
Yeah.
in all your senses, really, like transitioning out of just that way of life. And that's what I was talking about, the unlearning, it's
Yeah.
like you
Oh,
had to
yeah.
unlearn and also learn, it's so, and I think this is where I had to learn this for myself, is like giving yourself so much grace during that process, during that transition, because
Yeah.
it's all new. so,
It is.
so
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. It's super awkward and painful and all of that.
yeah.
And, so I mean, honestly I think it was Tony Robbins who said, people take action when the pain of staying the same is more than the pain of change. And
Yes.
when you reach that place where you go, and that was me, I was like, I'll do anything. Just tell me what to do. You know? I'm okay with the discomfort. I need to stop walking into this pain over and over again. It's just ridiculous. And luckily I had the right guy, and we're still really good friends.
I love that. Well, tell me, because you have also, raised millions of dollars for startups, working with entrepreneurs. Like, what do you think is the biggest challenge that entrepreneurs face today? And how do you kind of help them overcome that?
To me, it's never about the idea.
Hmm.
It's really more about the people. So
Okay,
entrepreneurs can be
elaborate. Yeah,
can
tell
people
me.
entrepreneurs get excited about let's say you're a tech entrepreneur, right?
Mhm.
And these people are usually engineers who can code, and they want to disrupt the market. They have all these sort of ideas, right? and and it's wonderful, and they can actually disrupt the market. But 95% of startups fail, and most of them fail not because of a bad idea. Most of them fail because of people who are unprepared to execute on it. So entrepreneurs need to figure out themselves, and there's all kinds of things there, right? It's the people that cause the mess up. It's the people that cause the crash, not the idea. So when people say, oh, it's just not the right idea, that's just rubbish. Even if it's a bad
Absolutely.
idea, you'll pivot to a
Yes.
better idea, you know like oh, I mean, most of the things that are household names now, like YouTube, for example, they were not intended as what they're used now. YouTube, the founders of YouTube wanted to do a dating app. It was literally a video app for people to hook up and say, look at me, here's who I am, and find me, and let's go out. That's what it was. It was a terrible idea. It didn't work. But YouTube is massive now because they just didn't give up, and they did some right things. And I think I've helped so many entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs, and and coach them and mentor them, and it's really them getting in their own way. That's what
Mhm.
it is. So this idea of I'm going to just hustle and hustle culture, I'm going to not sleep nights, it's a terrible idea. I think it's overrated, hustle culture. It may work for maybe a month or two or three or six, maybe if you're in your 20s, but it's not going to work. Like, and it may work if you're a Zuckerberg, but how many Zuckerbergs are they? Like, do you know that 90 people? There's this myth of this hoodie wearing college student who becomes a billionaire, and that's sort of the standard of the entrepreneur. But the statistics, the facts don't support that truth. It's not true. The average successful entrepreneur is in his 40s and is successful after 3 failures minimum.
Mhm.
Why? They figured themselves out. That's why. You know. So this idea that this romanticized hoodie wearing college student hustle culture guy, it's a myth. It's a complete myth. Even if it happens every once in a while, it happens once in a million times, right? Not like this, not 90% of the times. So figure yourself out. Figure out practices that help you be self-aware, balanced, joyful, creative, not depleted. Create a community around you who can speak truth to you. Learn how to manage people, how to attract people. If you're an engineer, most engineers are not people. You know, they don't have the skills. You have to learn the skills. If you want to be a founder, you need to learn the skills, or just work for somebody else. Fine. But if you want to be a founder, you better figure out people skills. Emotional intelligence, self-awareness. Um, you will fail if you don't. Basically, right? So it's people that mess up the startups, not the idea itself, not lack of funds,
Absolutely.
none of those things.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. That has been held true. I've been a people leader in multiple organizations. some that did really well, because they understood people and the
Hmm.
importance of people, and ones that, really struggled because
Yeah.
they didn't take the time to learn themselves, look at their inner mirror, understand who they are, all the things that you mentioned, what makes them tick, like what brings them energy, what doesn't bring them energy, how to hire, how to
Yeah.
even appreciate people, like
Exactly.
so many things. And I think like founders get so caught up in, the idea, VC funding, and all these things, all these bells, right? That show that, look at me, I'm doing great. But what they I think they forget is that without the people, all you have is an idea. That's it.
Yep. And you can't do it on
But
yourself ever.
you can't do it yourself, So
Yep.
yes. I didn't know you did a short film, Dance with Me.
Oh yeah.
Tell me, okay, what? That's amazing. How did you transition into doing that? Like, was it just one of your,
It was just a. It was just a. It was.
cannonball
It
experiences?
was. Yeah. So yeah, it was. It was one of. I did a short film. It's not actually a massive leap because I've done music videos. I have a media company. We do commercials and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
for decades, so I know the production process of a video thing. But I've never directed and produced a film, even a short film. So I was on a bike ride with my wife Deb, and I was telling her about this spoken word artist that I was listening to. Her name's Amina Brown. She's wonderful, and she had this poem called "Dance with Me," and it was a bit basically about the spiritual journey of the divine and the person, and that it's a dance between the divine and the person, and that you have to
Mm-hmm.
allow the divine to guide you. And I thought it was such a gorgeous. The imagery was so cool, and I'm like, I was on a bike ride with her, and I go, maybe I can do like a music video with those roles, and then there's sort of spoken word over it. And she goes, "Well, why don't you just create a film, like a short film out of it? Because you can put some dialogue." And so she's the one actually that literally responsible for my major creative projects is my wife Deb. And I go, "Well, I
Shout
wasn't
out
really
to Deb.
thinking." Yeah, I know. Yeah, so I was like, "Well, that seems like a lot of work." And she goes, "Well, you don't you have friends, and we're going to Russia to visit." And she goes like, "Don't you know people that are ballet people? And Russia is huge on ballet, right? The Bolshoi theater is sort of the Mount Everest of the ballet world in the world, classical ballet." And she's like, "Don't you know have someone in the Bolshoi theater that you know?" I'm like, "Yes, yeah, yeah." And she goes, "Well, why don't you just reach out to them, see if you can find some dancers or something?" And I'm like, "Sure." I didn't think of. I mean, I was just sharing that I like this spoken word poem with you. Now you're making me, like you're giving me all these ideas. So I basically went back home. I wrote a script in about 4 hours. I sat down and I wrote a script, dialogue, the whole
Oh
thing,
my gosh.
and the plot, the dialogue, all of the characters, and I showed it to her. She was like, "Yeah, this is good." And then I reach out to somebody there, and I have nothing, no budget, no crew, no dancers, no actors, nothing, and I'm going in 2 weeks. So I reach out to my friend and I go, "Hey, here's the script. You want to do a short video?" And basically everybody I knew was unavailable, either traveling or touring with Europe or something like that. And then I'm like, okay, we're dead in the water again. And then I remembered that I knew somebody who used to dance in the Bolshoi theater, but hasn't for a long time. So I reached out to her and I'm like, I remember you used to dance. Do you have any friends there still who might be interested in doing this sort of little project with me? And my friend, she goes, actually, I know the prima ballerina of the Bolshoi. She's one of my best friends. And I'm like, can I send you the script? And she goes, sure. So I sent her the script. She forwarded it to the prima ballerina. Her name is Mariana Rishkina. And she's like, and she read it, and it sort of has a spiritual dimension to it and everything. And so she basically came back and she goes, I love the script. I will give you two of my dancers, two of my best soloists of the Bolshoi as actors, and I will choreograph this dance for you that's in the script, and I will play the role of the choreographer, and I will let you shoot in the main rehearsal hall of the Bolshoi Theater. Just like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And then, so basically that's how it all came together. And we, I found the crew in a very similar way, like Supernatural, like a full film crew, and we shot it in 4 days. And then I needed a modern song to drive it. So it's not like a classical song. So I wanted modern ballet and a modern song. So then in the middle of a shoot there, I write and record the title song for the movie in 4 hours in 2 languages.
What?
It was like
Oh
it
my
was a blur.
gosh.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my
So
gosh. It's like, just talk about divine intervention in that whole, I mean,
yeah,
from your wife kind of giving you the idea to, and I love that you're not afraid to ask,
yeah,
for help,
yeah,
and support. It's like, what would you say, or how would you coach someone who struggles with that? Like, look at all the things that, just you asking,
yeah.
how it
Oh,
just
absolutely.
took a life of its own. Like, like that's something I'm working on constantly, is
Yeah.
asking.
I think honestly, if you understand the power of
Mhm.
overflowing with an idea, with joy, with
Mhm.
confidence into action, you will do this over and over again. And I do it over and over again. And basically, the way it works is that people want to be around people who are up to stuff. They really do. Like, they want to feel fully alive, they want adventure, they want to be part of something exciting. So if you get excited and if you do the right work on how to put something together that is good, and it is work and you have to develop mastery, just shout it from the rooftops. So just shout it from the rooftops, and people will come out of the woodwork to support you, to work with you, to hire you, everything. They really will. And what keeps us from doing that is that sort of terrible imposter syndrome. This is a primal thing in our brain. And this is one of the things that I really I focus on with people that I try to help, is I call it resistance. This an inner thing. It's this pressure down when you want to go up. It's external, it's internal. And if you beat resistance, it's almost like the resistance is the thing that brings you down, right? So what you need is escape velocity, right? It's like you have to leave the planet, basically, in your heart, in your mind. And if you reach escape velocity, then the resistance starts diminishing, and things start rolling, basically. And it's true about creativity, about music, about business, about entrepreneurship, new ventures. The resistance is always thicker in the beginning, and if you succumb to it, all you do is just get slapped down back to earth. Know your place. But if you keep going, and if you just wrestle through resistance and you beat it down, and the faster you go, the higher you go, the escape velocity gets higher, resistance gets less. Now your speed and your momentum is actually propelling you
Mhm.
forward. And most people just don't reach that spot, right? And that is the hardest piece in any new thing, right? In starting any new direction, new career, is that piece where resistance is just awful, awful. You need every resources available to you to actually overcome it and reach that sort of escape velocity.
Oh my God. I love how I can see it. As you were explaining it, I can see it. That's a gem right there. Hopefully the audience is going to write that one down. That is so good. Oh my goodness. Wow. That just moved me in so many ways. You have no idea. Um, Tell me a little bit about, because I actually saw that you have a Substack like I do.
Uh-huh.
I was actually a former people leader at Substack and helped,
I didn't know that.
build,
That's fantastic.
yeah, yeah, and
What?
helped build the company that actually is building the platform. They haven't grown too much since I left, so they're really working tremendously with the core team that was there when I helped build it.
Wow,
So it's
that's really
just
cool.
phenomenal to see. It's phenomenal
Hmm.
to see, like, where they are today, since I joined. So tell me a little bit about your newsletter and also your podcast, Headspace.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of this, it's both a way to serve, right? It's both a way to
Mhm.
say, hey, here's the best what I have in 27 years of professional work, right? And life experience and all of that. And try to just give it away.
Mhm.
And at the same time, it's tremendously enriching because if you know, by adopting the discipline, hey, every Sunday, every week, I'm going to release a podcast episode, and every Sunday I will drop a newsletter. And a newsletter is usually contains the episode plus other stuff that I love, insights, books that I'm reading, movies that I'm watching, things like that, right? So it's just the best stuff that I find that I'm excited about. I put it there, and if I developing by developing that discipline, it helps me tremendously as well, because it gives me it mobilizes me to create valuable, heartfelt, quality content that is authentically mine, not like AI generated ChatGPT stuff, right? That people put out there and they promote it now, right? Like, hey, have a newsletter in 30 seconds, you have a month worth of stuff. Okay, and what's the value of that? You're literally joining the ranks of cogs in a machine. Like you're commoditizing yourself if you're doing that. But what I want to do is I want to share genuine, authentic, valuable, true experiences, expertise every week. So I love it because I get to serve people, and it sometimes it's painful to do because I'm like, oh, again, I have to do one more. But it's that discipline mobilizes me, but makes me a better writer, better communicator, and people seem to enjoy it. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, definitely subscribe. I'm enjoying it. I love writing. It's like one of my favorite things to do. And it's the time that I feel like probably most free, because I'm like very much like controlled in a lot of ways. Like I'm very focused, very disciplined in a lot of ways. But my writing, I feel like a lot more free.
Mm.
And like you said, it's like a way, I wanted God to be able to use me in a way, like outside of the things that I was doing. I'm like, how many ways can you use me? Because we all have
Hmm.
all these gifts in us,
Yeah,
and I think it's so important for us to tap in and understand what those gifts are, but then share them because they're not ours and they're not
yeah, I
meant to be
agree.
hoarded. And so I love that you're sharing your gift because that's really what you're doing. And our life's journey is the gift. And so it's like you don't even have to
Absolutely.
look too far.
Yeah,
Like a lot of times people are looking for this external outside thing, and it's within you, it's in
it is.
and so
Yeah,
I think when people can understand that the gift is within your journey, like I'm sharing, like like you said, books I've read, like teachings, learnings, like all kinds of stuff put together. And sometimes I will use Chat GPT for my outline, so I'm guilty of that. But a lot of times, like it's all the things that I have up here, and just things that have occurred throughout my life. And then I'll find a way, like a fun way to share it. And
yeah.
so
Well, I use
it's been
ChatGPT
great
every
for me.
day. It's ChatGPT is the best editor and assistant you can possibly have.
Ever.
But it's not the creative. It's not the
No,
creator. That's the thing. And
no,
no one can be
absolutely.
better. No one can compete with you about being
Yes.
you. You know.
Yes.
And I think that distinct voice is so important. And that's what people
Yes.
want. People want authenticity. They want genuine insights.
Mhm.
And maybe some will read my stuff and not resonate, and read your stuff and just completely be glued to your content, and vice versa.
Mhm.
Because, and that's the beauty, right? And I think every professional out there needs to develop a personal brand because of it. Because at no time in the history of humanity, your actual value, your true essential value, has been so readily available to be delivered to people for free, or even monetized when people want to hire you or use your services or your product. At any given time in humanity, it's never been better than now, right?
Yes.
And like I have to convince people, write a book, start a newsletter, do something. Do something to communicate
Absolutely.
what you have inside, what you have been taught, the treasure that you have under your feet
Mhm.
to the world. It could be anything. You don't even have to be in front of the camera. Be behind the camera. I don't care. But do something because it's valuable, because it's going to train you to even understand that you have something to offer, and it will make you known and give you a brand and give you a reputation where other people come out of the woodwork, just like we mentioned, right, and go, hey, I want to work with you. I want to collaborate. I want to do this. I want to do a strategic partnership. I want to be a client. I want to help you with this other thing. But that only happens when you actually raise your voice and say, this is what I have to offer. And I don't see any reason why people shouldn't do it. Basically, I just don't know one.
No,
Because
absolutely.
even if you're shy and if you're not this or that, you can write. If you don't want to speak, if you don't want to be in front of the camera, be behind the camera, do a voiceover, do whatever, do animations, write a book. You can introvert. It doesn't matter, right? But
Or
do it.
even just creating content, something as
Yeah,
simple as just creating like short form content, like I
exactly.
started with that. Like, I think too, what feels overwhelming to people, right, is like they'll see someone like you that has these successful companies and, you have a great newsletter, your podcast, like all these things that feels very overwhelming. And
Yeah,
so I tell people start with something really small. I started by just sharing my own written quotes. Like, that's how I started.
yeah.
When I went on this journey, I didn't go from 0 to 1,000, like I started by just putting myself out there by sharing my own personal quotes that I have, like tons of notebooks filled with my written quotes, from books that I got inspired by, or a movie, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then I, slowly started doing lives and on different topics, and just doing it that way, creating content, and then went to starting a podcast. And so I think it's, the more you do, the more comfortable you'll get with sharing too, and putting yourself out there, because that's really what it is getting past the judgments and,
Mm-hmm.
imposter syndrome, all those things, so
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Yeah, I agree,
but
and I
yeah,
think
so
everybody should develop their personal brand. I don't care if you're an entrepreneur or even if you're in a big corporation. Personal
yeah.
brand is your reputation at scale,
Mhm.
and I think it's super important. It's going to change the way you operate professionally, personally, all of it.
Yeah, it's the one thing I wish I learned sooner. So
Yeah,
could not
me.
agree more. Could
Yeah,
not agree more. Well, tell me all the things that you're doing. How do you take care of yourself? How do you fuel your mind, your body, and your soul?
I I'm very disciplined, and that's sort of what I try to teach with my performance coaching. Is that, look, if you want to be at the top of your game, at the top of the industry, if you want to be the best at something, like, there's really no way around it. You can't be a couch potato and binge on Netflix and eat whatever you want and not exercise and not feed your heart, your mind, your soul, not develop spiritual disciplines. You just won't do that. You won't be that. If you want to excel, you have to figure out a framework, rhythms, principles, habits. You have to program yourself for success. And then you succeed on autopilot, basically, right? So, because the pressures are so high when you're doing things like that, there's a there the we talked about sort of this escape velocity only after you overcome this intense pressure down. That you have to condition yourself. Like, you need to be an athlete, a professional person who's an athlete of mind, heart, mind, professionalism, exceptional capabilities. Athletes train. Athletes plan. They have
All the
meal
time.
plans.
Hmm.
And I basically have a lot of rhythms, a lot of principles. So my first hour is sort of my core thing. I get up before the sun, and I spend an hour. I exercise, I contemplate in prayer, I journal, and I learn something. That's my
Hmm.
first hour. That's my win the day piece, right? And I do probably 2-3 hours of creative work minimum a day, minimum. Uh, and the things that I learn, I implement. So remember the immersive learning principle, right? Is that you can't just listen to an audiobook or a podcast. You have to go do it, right? If you're learning about sales, get on sales calls. If you're learning about web design, design some websites. If you're learning about writing, write a book. Even if it's a crappy book, you have to do it and you have to get feedback, right? So I do that every day, basically, and there's things that I'm learning and developing. Rest is a big deal. So I sort of, there's a hack. I batch tasks every day by groups. So for example, I divide my day into before noon and afternoon. Before noon is for creative work. The afternoon is for communicating. So emails, answers, phone calls, all in the afternoon. Writing, creating, imagining, designing, brand strategy stuff, the stuff that I do for my clients, even for my digital media work, it's all in the morning because my tank is full, my emotional tank is full, my creative tank is full, and I do it before noon, basically. You only have really 3-4 highly productive hours a day on average. You just don't have more. So basically what I do is the stuff that is more mechanical, I do it in the afternoon because I've already exhausted my super creative tank, by then. So I walk every day. I work out every day. I walk every day, 45 minutes minimum. I get sunshine first thing in the morning. Like there's all these little things that you do, there's supplements, there's the ways you eat. I'm done at probably 6 p.m. I'm done. Like nothing happens. I'm just fired up and to be with Deb. We go on walks. We walk the dog by the lake every night. We watch movies. So every single day there's a rest and delight every single day. I take her on a date every week, once a week minimum, sometimes twice a week.
I was just gonna ask. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, take on a date. Every week we Sabbath. So there's one day that we do nothing. So that's holy, untouchable. And that's where you get charged up with excitement, with love, with delight. It's just pure enjoyment all day long. And even if things are crashing down around you, it does not matter, basically. Because if you're an entrepreneur, something is crashing around you all the time. Like it's just
Absolutely.
true, So like if you're gonna go by that, like when I have time, I'll do a full day. You'll never rest, you'll be depleted the whole time. So we rest every week. We have a Sabbath day, and we just do nothing, and we feast, we sleep, we make love, we go on walks, we just delight. We soak it in, basically, So yeah, so we do. We try to do a quarterly retreat. Just go away for a weekend, and we leave the country at least once a year. So we have these rhythms, but that allows me to also work in a very intense way, right? So I work really, really hard. When I work, I go very, very hard because I'm capable.
But it's almost like you're intentional about not just your work, but also your personal life too. Like
yes, because that will if I don't pay attention to my personal life, it's going to sink me anyway, regardless.
Exactly. But I wish more people understood that, and I think and I see this in men especially, they are so focused on their career because they're so defined by it, and so they spend so much energy getting that right, but then really neglecting,
they do
really the most important, the foundational. I mean, that's your foundation,
Yeah, and I think men are sort of wired to be warriors, and so we mess up in that department quite a bit, and I did, So I just figured out after 3 generations of broken homes, I'm not going to be one of those broken homes. That was just one of those core things that I decided to do with my life, that I can suck at everything. I'm not going to suck in marriage. Basically, that was sort of my fundamental decision.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that. Well,
yeah.
Oh my goodness, this has been such a delicious conversation. I could just talk to you forever. I'm like, I want to be sensitive to your time because I know we're over, but my gosh, like this was exactly what my soul needed, and you really fueled my soul, and I appreciate you so much. I really
Thanks,
do.
Damesha. Appreciate it. Appreciate you very much as well.
Absolutely. Well, tell me, like, what's next, and are you taking on any new clients? Because I know after this, people are going to hear this; they're going to want to work with you. Like, are you taking on any new clients right now?
I basically I have a wait list. So no, in the
Okay.
sense that I don't have an open spot now, but my wait list is feeds my client list basically. So if somebody wants to reach out, they can just go to exponential.life and set up a strategy call. And if it's a good fit, I can give you free advice, completely free advice, no strings attached. But if it's a good fit, you can be on the wait list. And then whenever a spot comes open, we can say, hey, there's a spot coming up open in like a month or 3 weeks or whatever, and you can join. So that's the process currently.
Amazing. Well, you heard it here. Thank you so much for coming on and blessing Sunday Soul Day. Everyone, have an amazing Sunday.